welcome to my video. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about, as you may notice, I'm back on KDE here. So I'm giving KDE another try here. I do like KDE. When I complain about KDE, it's because I actually love this desktop environment. Because if I really did not like it at all, I would just simply not use it or even talk about it. I just would just forget about it. Because other desktops that I don't really care for, you don't hear me talk about it. So that's why you hear me talk about KDE. You may think I'm hating on it, but I don't hate KDE. In fact, I like KDE. And one thing I really like about KDE a lot is I like the customization. I like that it has a system tray out of the box. You don't have to put an extension to it or anything. There's a system tray, and it works really great. I really like KDE for they have system tray. They got desktop icons where you can see right here. Yeah, KDE it's not scared to be a desktop. Okay, GNOME tries to be semi desktop and kind of like a touchscreen kind of tablet desktop as well. But I don't really find GNOME that bad. I do find GNOME has a better workspace switcher and all that. I find their workspace is a lot better than KDE. One thing about KDE I don't really like about it is their workspace. They need to really improve on that. But other than that, it works good. The system works good. You can make things work like GNOME. For example, let's say if I want to go to desktop 3 or workspace 3, okay? Let's say I open up terminal in this workspace, okay? And I go back. Let's say I go back to workspace 2, okay? So I'm back on this is workspace 2. Just it's selected. This is desktop 2. So it's selected. So I'm on desktop 2. But if I click on the terminal, KDE terminal, it'll go to workspace 3. Now, how do you change that to work like GNOME, where all applications always, like you notice, even though I'm in a different workspace, all these applications show that they're open. And when I click on them, they will go to those applications. They won't open up another application. Let's say I go to desktop 4, you'll see they're all open. All the applications that they have open are there. So this will go back to the other workspace. So this is exactly how GNOME works out of the box, but KDE does not work like this out of the box. KDE isolates their applications in the box. Though I think if you have Discord open, it will go to the workspace. It won't open up in Discord. Though it used to do that before in the past, I noticed that changed. So I guess they've did something with that. Kind of like Windows. Windows does the same thing. Windows will isolate stuff in their workspace. I did not notice that. I thought actually Windows worked like GNOME, but I think GNOME just works like that. I think other desktops. I'm not sure about Mac OS. I hadn't played around with Mac OS that much, and I hadn't been using any workspace in Mac OS. I usually just use one desktop in Mac OS, and I use Stage Manager, which I think is very convenient. So that's how I use it. I don't really use workspace too much in there. You don't really need to. But I'm not really a power user, Mac OS user, even though I do have Mac hardware and I do have Mac OS running on it. I have a Mac M1, so it's running the latest Mac OS system. But I just don't use it. I don't know. I mean, I can use it if I want to, but I prefer to use Linux. I like Linux the best over all these other systems I have. I do use Windows as well. But I don't use Windows Linux. I use it for everything. If I want to game on Linux, I can game on Linux. I want to, just whatever you want to do on Linux. I use it for everything. Windows, I do play PC games on it instead of Linux. Even though I do play Linux games, or I run games on Linux as well, because I do have a Steam Deck, so I run games on that a lot. So that's Linux gaming right there. But I also do some Linux gaming on my B-Link as well. But for the most part, I rather run games on Windows, and the reason why I do that is because the games are designed for Windows, so therefore it has like the best support. And what's nice, I can just use all my other computers with Linux, and I can just stream my game from that box, and just use that and with the Windows base, and just stream it across all my other computers that I have. And with the B-Link, I have Bluetooth on it, so I can just connect my PS5 controller to the B-Link, and I can sit on the couch and play my game. Like Final Fantasy 14, I'll just sit on the couch and I can play it without even running it on the B-Link, because B-Link can run Final Fantasy 14, but it's not the greatest experience, to be honest. I'd rather run it on my RTX 4060 GPU. It's a lot better GPU. So yes, I do like KDE. I complain about it. I probably was being kind of ignorant a little bit, and I apologize for that. I probably was just frustrated with KDE, but I didn't delete KDE. I kept it on. I went onto a different desktop environment. I played around with Hyperland as well. I mean, I love all these. I like GNOME. I like Hyperland. I like KDE. These are my 3 favorite desktops. I do like Hyperland a lot too. I like to write. I like to play around with Hyperland. I think it's a great window manager. But let me tell you one thing I like about KDE a lot, and I really really love this about KDE. Like I mentioned that I like the system tray and the desktop icons. That's another reason why I use KDE, or I prefer KDE. But also KDE has color schemes, which I can just keep the default GUI. I don't need to make it look like Mac OS. I don't need to make it look like Windows. I don't need to, have all this weird GUI. I like the default look of KDE. I think their GUI looks good. And I like to keep a desktop environment GUI, because when I used Unix back in the day, like Unix had CDE, and we didn't really change the window box. Okay, what we done with these kind of Unix systems, we changed the color schemes. And I'm still kind of like that. I like that traditional like color schemes. Like for me, like Ryzen, a desktop, is not about making it look like Mac OS or make it look like Windows or just have this weird like cyberpunk kind of looking desktop. No, to me, Ryzen it's all to do with color schemes. You match your wallpaper with like your panels, your terminal, and it just have it's all to do with palettes and color schemes. And basically that's what Ryzen to me is all about. But KDE is really nice because it has color schemes, and I can just keep the default look of KDE because I like that. And also, like if you use the default icons, the icons it changes colors with your color schemes, which I think is really neat. I don't use it. I use just papyrus. I don't know how you pronounce that. Papyrus icons. I like them better, but like if you use the KDE desktop icons, it does change colors with the color schemes. But I prefer papyrus icons. I'm probably not even saying it right. But anyways, how I change it to not have isolated desktop, where you have Firefox open on desktop 1 and you're in desktop 3 and you want to go back to the one that's already open in desktop 1, and you click on it, it'll go to that web browser. Like it shows like your icons always like open. How to do that? You gotta right click on the panel where it says icon only task manager, configure it. If you just click on where you have your icons, or your dock, whatever, and you click on that, okay? And so you'll go to behavior, and where it says show only task, make sure all this is untick. Untick all that. It'll make it it'll work like GNOME, like how you have GNOME, how you switch between desktops, stuff like that. So it's really cool. So let's see if I open up another virtual desktop. Okay. So if I hold down Control and Windows key, I can switch between desktops. And you can also do effects if you want to, like. So anyway, that's basically how you can make it work like GNOME, and I like that a lot because I do like to click on the application that I have open, and it goes right to it. Instead of like open up another, like, so let's say I have terminal on desktop 1, and then I go to desktop 2 to open up a program, but I want to go back to my terminal I already have open. Let's say if I was like in Vim, editing something in Vim, and like I don't want to open up another terminal. I want to go back to the terminal that I am using it for with a program, right? So I want to go back to that. So this way, it'll go back to that desktop 1 where Vim is open. So instead of it open up another terminal inside the isolated workspace. And a lot of people like these isolated workspace. I personally do not like that. And that being default out of the box, I think that is not really cool. Maybe because Windows kind of works like that as well, and they're trying to just like cater to Windows users. But I don't know. I don't really use workspace in Windows too often. I'm so used to using Windows without workspaces that I just use one desktop, because I always use Windows like that because it never had virtual desktops in the past. It only started having virtual desktop in version 10. So yeah. But anyways, where I'm getting at. So, but yeah, like the way I have it set up now is exactly the way I want it. Yes, I was being ignorant. I really couldn't find the option. Like show task to me, like that doesn't make sense. But anyways, that's the option I was looking for. There was one person, I asked a question on the subreddit, on KDE subreddit, and I don't know, like it's like back and forth till that user just basically explain exactly what I needed. But like it just been like, show me your desktop with your Firefox being open. I was like, why do you want to see that? I was like, dude, I just want to not make my virtual desktops isolated. How do I make it not isolated? Basically, in a nutshell. But anyways, that user did help me out, so I give him a vote up, because that was pretty cool. A +1, or you want to call it, because it actually, that user helped me. So back and forth to the point where I figure it out. I know how to do it now. That's really cool. Now, am I going to stay on KDE? Sure. I'm also using the latest drivers, as I know I showed in my previous video. I am on Wayland. I noticed the driver pretty good. I'm using KDE as well. It works really well for me, man. Like, I have no problems with this at all. I find it works pretty good. I'm actually quite happy with the system, and yeah. So I'm back on KDE. I basically changed it. I know that before I used to have like a top panel, and I had it kind of like global menus and all that stuff. I just kind of now I put the panel back down, keeping it real, like traditional KDE style. This is basically how KDE always used to look like, even from like the before Plasma, like the K desktop always looked like this. They always had like a menu, and it had icons there next to the menu, and it also had workspace switcher, but you could take it off. And actually, KDE has not changed much. It just looks better. I do like the floating panel. I like when you maximize it. It turns into a normal panel, and it actually like goes straight down, like flat on each corner, to give you like the full real estate of your screen. And then when you like get out of it, it just goes back. I really like that. I mean, KDE 5 you can do that as well, which is cool. But I just think I like KDE 6. I made a lot of videos in the past. I've been testing out the beta, the alpha of KDE 6, and like everything I said about KDE, I really mean it. Like I love KDE. I have nothing against KDE, but I was frustrated with it because I couldn't switch workspaces the way I wanted to be. And now that I figured it out, or a user helped me to figure it out, like now that I know how to do it, it's working exactly the way I personally want it. I know like not everybody likes that. Some people like isolation in their virtual desktop, which is fine. And I do like that KDE gives you the options to have it or not. I think as GNOME, it's like, we don't want that. We're not going to give you the option to have it or not. They just take things out and they don't give you the option to put it back if you want it back. They just take things out of stuff. And that's one thing I hate about GNOME. GNOME, I'm not saying GNOME is bad. I like GNOME. I do like their dock or their dash. And I do like the extension dash dock. I think that's awesome. I think that's one thing KDE needs. But if I'm going to use it like Windows or the regular KDE style, I don't need a dock, because my panel and my bottom panel is, my panel and my dock all in one, kind of like what Windows does, or basically like Windows or KDE. KDE does the same thing as Windows. They're both similar, like UI. Like default UI look is like this. I know you can do a lot of different types of things. You can customize it. I like the default KDE look. I think it looks good, and I like the color scheme. I like to pick a color scheme that I like and just use that, and I keep the default skin or theme. As I'm not really, I like things minimal. Okay, I like color. I like to change the colors. I always like to keep the default GUI to all the operators I use. I don't know why, because I just think I like to use what developers like design their desktop. I like to see their like why they choose this UI, why this UI is like the way it is, and why it's designed like that out of the box. And that's why I use it, because I'm kind of curious to see the vision of what the developers are doing. And this is KDE default theme. They didn't change it. Usually they change the theme a little bit sometimes every next release. They kept it the same thing as 5. And I think 4 was kind of like that. I don't remember, to be honest. I don't remember Plasma 4 too much, to be really fair. I forget. It's been a while. But it's very similar to KDE 5. So, but I like the UI. It's basic. It's not, trying to be like Windows, not trying to be like Mac. It's KDE. KDE is KDE. And I think KDE is really great because it has a lot of features. They don't take features out. They add a lot of features, and they give other features to use to make things work differently for other users that like things to work. Like, I like to have all my applications open all the time on my panel, so that way every workspace I work on, when I click on the application on the panel, it'll go back to that application that's open instead of open up another application. I like that. I like to just take it out. Like, I like to take the option like show task. I like to have it all on tick, and it works really well. I'm really happy with this. I really like KDE. I'm going to be using it. And I'm happy with what my setup. And the reason why I went back to KDE in the first place is due to the fact that I do like color schemes. I think GNOME needs to have that. I like GNOME default theme. It's nice, but I think that they need a color scheme like what KDE has, where you can get different themes and have just have a color scheme. Change it. I think it's brilliant. I think color scheme is great. That's one thing I find GNOME is really missing a lot. It's color schemes, system tray, and a visible dock, desktop icons, and also transparency on their panels. Make it look nicer, because I find GNOME looks really basic. I like minimal looking desktops, but GNOME looks way too basic. It's too bare bone. It's less features, and you can add things to it with the extensions, but I think out of the box experience of GNOME, it's not a good experience. Period. Everybody that uses GNOME, they'll use a bunch of extensions. It's not just like I use one or two, or I don't use it. There's some very brave users out there that just use it vanilla, okay? But a lot of the GNOME users are going to use a lot of extensions on it. And I'm one of them. I don't use that much extensions on it, but I still use extensions. I want to go into a desktop like KDE. I don't have to put in extensions because KDE offers me a lot of options and customization and also color schemes. And also you can theme it up if you want to, but I like the KDE. I like their default theme. It's basic. I like it. It looks nice. It just looks like Linux to me. This, like, you look at this desktop. This doesn't look like Windows. This does not look like Mac. You look at it. It's like, yeah, this is Linux, or this is a Unix desktop. Because FreeBSD kind of has the same kind of. They have the same kind of look. Because FreeBSD I use a lot with KDE as well, even years ago in the past. I always find KDE was a really good desktop for the BSD because they always had the latest KDE stuff, because KDE does support FreeBSD a lot, or BSD in general. And so that's really cool about them. As a GNOME, they built their system made for mostly for Linux or Red Hat or whatever. But KDE is really cool because they do support other platforms, other operating systems, especially FreeBSD, and that's really cool. I like that. Anyways, good job, KDE. I don't mean to sound like an asshole. I do constructive criticism, which was supposed to be constructive criticism. I wasn't making fun of it. I wasn't being ignorant. Maybe I was being a little bit ignorant. I couldn't find the options. Maybe I just wasn't thinking. I don't know. But I apologize for if I sounded ignorant. I really did not meant to sound like I was being hateful towards KDE, because I even said it many times, I like KDE. I said it many times in my videos, if I hated KDE, I wouldn't talk about it. I wouldn't complain about it. KDE does a lot of great things. Okay, there's a lot of plus. There's a lot of yes, thumbs up on a lot of things like KDE does. Pretty much everything that KDE has and does, I really like about it. And there's only one little thing I don't like about KDE is the workspace. To me personally, I wish it'd be the opposite. Instead of it being isolated, it not being isolated, and then it gives you the options that you want to make it isolated. But I get it. They're setting the workspace more towards the Windows style. I think it should be set up more towards GNOME style, because GNOME is Linux and Windows is not Linux. So that's why I think that it should be more like GNOME. I know they don't want to copy them, but I just like the fact that having an open application and a virtual desktop, and then you click on it on your panel. It's just a lot faster workflow, because the way how I use my computer, I put certain applications in one workspace. Then I go to another workspace, I put a certain application in that workspace. Then I go to another workspace, I put a certain application in that workspace. Then I open it all up, and I open up the documents in that application. Let's say it's the editor, or let's say it's like a file manager, or let's say I am doing something, or have a terminal that I'm doing something in that terminal. So when I go to my panel, I click on all the applications that I have open. I want to see it, on the panel, and then when I click on it, it'll just switch over to that application on each workspace, and that way I can group it all up in different workspaces and organize each workspace to a certain have it a certain workflow in each workspace, and then I can just multitask to all of them really easily, going back and forth, have a web browser on a separate workspace, because this is how I do things on a tile window manager. But instead of having a panel, I use my keyboard. I go to super key 1, super key 2. I mean, it goes to different workspaces, and I just switch over. But since I use a mouse a lot on KDE and GNOME, and they have a panel or a dock, that's how I do my workflow like that. So I know everybody likes things differently. I know Windows doesn't do this. It does the same thing. It'll open up Firefox, and it'll isolate it from the other workspace. Like if you have a Firefox open on one workspace and you go on to another workspace, you open up Firefox, it won't go back to the one that's already open. It'll open up a brand new one. And I don't like that. Just like a terminal too, it'll open up a brand new one in a newer workspace when I rather just go back to the one that's already open. Why have more than one open when you can just use one? You know what I mean? And to me, that's the way I look at it. Anyways, that is my video. This is getting quite long, but I am back on KDE. I like KDE. I think it's a great desktop environment, and so I hope you guys are all happy. I'm back in KDE 1 with me, and I want to thank the community of KDE for helping me out with the options. Now I know how to make the workspace exactly the way I want it to be, and to me that makes me very happy. It'll make me stay on KDE now because I can do exactly what I could do on GNOME, but on KDE. And the reason why I stay on KDE because, like I said, system tray, desktop icons, customization, freedom, flexibility, and color schemes. Really, I gotta get a good applause. Like the color schemes on KDE is like really a feature that I love a lot on KDE. So thank you very much for color schemes. That is really, I really like it a lot. I really appreciate it. It brings me back on like the old Unix systems like Motif. You can just change the colors. They kept the same GUI, but you can change the colors. And to me, I like to just play around with colors. I like just playing around with palettes. Like I do the same thing with my terminal. I as you can see, I customize my terminal really nice. I like to erase with colors. I like to blend colors. I like colors. Color scheme is just great. Color schemes to me is awesome. Like having a really nice color scheme for your text editor when you're programming, and you have like certain colors and sans text, highlight colors. You just set like your own palettes, your own color schemes, and you kind of just make it all consistent with your terminal, to your text editor, to your your GUI desktop applications, to your taskbar, to your title bar, and everything it's all consistent. Looks nice. GNOME has a lot of problems with things being inconsistent. Like I noticed, like when you load up, it's a little bit in KDE, but I find KDE actually blends applications better, even with because they make a GTK theme of Breeze to match what it matches. So like when you open up a GTK app and KDE, it actually looks the same, the UI, so it kind of is more consistent. As GNOME, it doesn't do that. And when you load up an application, it'll load up like a GNOME looking application. As I find, KDE does. KDE looks more consistent compared to GNOME. GNOME looks like a lot of different UIs. There are a lot of different, you have the legacy UI of GTK 3, you have the GTK 4 UI, then you have like the Qt UI looks really terrible on GNOME. And to me, that's why I went back to KDE for inconsistent, GUI window box, no color schemes, and just lack of customization and lack of feature, pretty much. I like GNOME though. GNOME works really well. It's a fluid system. It's really stable. The workspace in GNOME is fantastic. If KDE would have the workflow of workspace switcher, all that features that GNOME has, I love that about the workspace in GNOME. GNOME, I will say, they do a really good job with the workspace. As a KDE, that's probably the weak spot for me with KDE is the workspace. But other than that, KDE does everything else great for me. It's just the workspace is a little bit weak spot, but now that I can set it up like GNOME, it's not too bad. But I still think it needs more work. Personally, I think it needs more work. It needs like a workspace switcher would be nice to have in KDE. Anyways, guys, this video is getting quite long. Thanks for the watch. Have a good one. Cheers.